My parents always chose my sister, until my hidden $11.8 million fortune was discovered. I've also focused on maintaining a conversational, Reddit post style, suitable for a YouTube narration. Here's the rewritten script, English. Have you ever felt like you were living in someone else's shadow, only to realize you were the one casting the light all along? That's kind of my story, and it's a doozy. Buckle up, Reddit, because this is the tale of how my parents' blatant favoritism towards my sister, Olivia, backfired spectacularly after she discovered I wasn't just scraping by. I'm Amelia, 36 now, and I need to get this off my chest. I grew up in a family where my younger sister, Olivia, was the sun, moon, and stars. I was, at best, Pluto, technically a dwarf planet, mostly ignored. It wasn't always that bad. Until I was about 7, I was an only child. My parents, Robert and Susan, weren't exactly overflowing with affection, but they were present. We'd do the occasional family thing, like trips to the local apple orchard, or watching movies. We weren't the picture-perfect family, but we were functional. Then, my sister Olivia arrived, and everything changed. It was a dramatic entrance, too. My Aunt Carol showed up in the middle of the night, telling me to pack a bag because my mom was in the hospital. Olivia was premature, a tiny, fragile thing. The next few weeks were a blur of hushed tones and hurried hospital visits. Olivia looked like a porcelain doll, hooked up to all sorts of machines. I wasn't allowed near her, really. That was the beginning of the invisible wall, the one separating me from my family. When Olivia finally came home, our house was sterilized. My mom became obsessed with cleanliness. Disinfectant wipes everywhere, hand sanitizer stations, the whole 9 yards. The smell of bleach still triggers me, if I'm honest. But here's the kicker, anytime I showed even a hint of a sniffle, I was exiled, sent off to Grandma Eleanor's or Aunt Carol's. Every single time. At first, it was kind of fun. Grandma Eleanor baked amazing pies, and Aunt Carol had a killer collection of classic mystery novels. But kids aren't dumb. Eventually, you figure it out. You're not going on an adventure, you're being treated like a biohazard. Your existence is a potential threat to the precious, fragile sister. I tried everything to get their attention, the right way. Straight A's? Barely a glance from my mom, who was always preoccupied with Olivia's endless appointments. Won the regional spelling bee? My dad just asked if I could keep the trophy in the basement because Olivia was sensitive to dust. Seriously? The real punch to the gut came when I was 11. I'd been practicing for the school talent show for months, teaching myself to play Let It Be on the piano. The night of the show, Olivia had a slight temperature, barely a fever. Guess who had 0 family members in the audience? 2 weeks later, the entire family, including both sets of grandparents, showed up for Olivia's 10-minute recorder recital, where she essentially butchered Mary Had a Little Lamb. Olivia quickly learned to manipulate the system. By age 6, she was perfectly healthy, but that didn't stop the theatrics. Headache? Home from school. Feeling tired? Someone else, guess who? Had to do her chores. Stressed about a test? Mom would literally call the school to get an extension. I retreated into my own world, spending hours in my room, devouring books about architecture and historical fashion. My room became my sanctuary, mainly because Olivia claimed she was allergic to my potpourri, making it the one place she wouldn't invade. It's messed up, but part of me was grateful when she faked being sick. At least then I'd get sent to Grandma Eleanor's, where someone actually cared about my day. Grandma Eleanor was the one who got me interested in antique maps. She had this incredible collection, and she'd let me help her organize and catalog them. Should have seen that as a sign, I guess. The worst part wasn't the obvious favoritism, it was the gaslighting. The constant justification. Olivia needs more attention because she had such a difficult start. Amelia is so independent, she understands her sister has special needs. No, I didn't understand. I was a kid who couldn't figure out why being healthy made me less deserving of love. Looking back, I see how those years molded me. The constant message that I was somehow inconvenient, dangerous, that sticks with you. But, it also taught me self-reliance. When nobody's checking your homework or celebrating your wins, you learn to be your own cheerleader. High school was my escape plan. While Olivia was busy creating drama in middle school, I was focused on getting out. And let me tell you, nothing motivates you like knowing nobody's going to do it for you. Remember how I mentioned organizing Grandma Eleanor's map collection? That taught me the value of organization and detail. I applied that to everything. My desk was like a command center, color-coded notebooks, perfectly scheduled study plans. Olivia mocked me, calling me Rain Man 2.0, but being invisible has its perks. Nobody's watching you fail, so you might as well go all in. I joined every club that wouldn't clash with my part-time job at the corner cafe. Shout out to Mrs. Peterson, the owner, who actually remembered my birthday when my own parents forgot. Debate team? Check. National Honor Society president? Check. School newspaper editor-in-chief? Check. Debate was my thing. There's something satisfying about dismantling someone's argument with logic and composure. Plus, it taught me negotiation, a skill that would come in very handy later. Won state twice, by the way. My parents missed both competitions because Olivia had important dance recitals. She was in the beginner class, barely on stage. Junior year, things got interesting. I took the SATs and got a perfect score. Not pretty good, perfect. 1,600. You know how rare that is? Less than 1%. I stared at the screen for 20 minutes, convinced it was a glitch. Rushed home to tell my parents. Yeah, I know, stupid. Mom was in the kitchen, helping Olivia with her history homework. Me, Mom, Dad, look. I got a perfect SAT score. Mom, that's nice, sweetie, but can you keep it down? Olivia's trying to concentrate. She has a big test tomorrow. Olivia, yeah, some of us actually have to study, Miss Genius. Mom, Olivia, honey, don't stress. You're just a different kind of learner. I still have that printout somewhere. Never even made it to the fridge. But Olivia's C in history? That got prime real estate, complete with a "we're so proud" magnet. The college application process was interesting. I applied to 12 schools, secretly. Wrote my own essays, got my own recommendations, handled the financial aid forms myself. My guidance counselor, Mr. Davis, was a lifesaver. He stayed late to help me navigate the FAFSA, since my parents were too busy. Then the acceptances started rolling in. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, University of California. Every single one with a scholarship offer. I kept them hidden in a locked box under my bed. I knew what would happen if Olivia found out. Suddenly, it would be all about her. But if Amelia goes to Harvard, I'll be all alone. Or some other nonsense. The day I got my full ride offer from UC Berkeley was the same day Olivia made the junior varsity dance team. Guess which one got celebrated with a family dinner? Hint, I ate microwave ramen in my room while they went to the Olive Branch. But that scholarship? My golden ticket. Full tuition, room and board, even a stipend for books. I could finally escape. The day I got that acceptance, I went to my favorite spot in the local library, 3rd floor, window seat overlooking the park, and cried. Not sad tears, relief tears. When I announced at dinner that I was going to UC Berkeley, my parents' reactions were predictable. Dad, California? But that's so far. What if Olivia needs you? Mom, I hope you're not expecting us to help with expenses. Olivia's dance competitions are very costly. Olivia, oh my God, finally. Can I have your room? I need a space for my TikToks. The summer before college, I worked double shifts at the corner cafe. Mrs. Peterson would slip me extra tips and always made sure I took home leftover pie. She also taught me something invaluable, how to spot genuine people in a world of phonies. Move-in day at UC Berkeley. My parents couldn't come, surprise, Olivia had a dance competition. Aunt Carol drove me, helped me set up my dorm, and slipped me an envelope with $300. Your grandma Eleanor wanted you to have this, she said. She's so proud of you. Found out later grandma had been saving that money for months, from her social security checks. That first night in my dorm, I made a promise. I was going to build a life so good that being overlooked would be impossible. Not for revenge, not to prove anything, but for that 7-year-old girl who used to get shipped off for having a runny nose. College flew by. All-nighters, instant ramen, and blessed freedom. Graduated summa cum laude from UC Berkeley, not that my parents noticed. They were too busy helping Olivia transfer to her second college in 2 years. But here's where things get interesting. I landed an entry-level position at Thompson & Sons auction house in San Francisco. Not the real name, for obvious reasons, but if you're in the business, you probably know it, real high-end place, old money clients. I started in their estate sales division, basically cataloging rich people's stuff after they died. Not glamorous, but it paid the bills. My first few months were standard, logging antique silverware, cataloging vintage furniture. Then came the Henderson estate. Mrs. Henderson was this elderly widow, no kids, leaving behind what everyone thought was just a massive collection of old maps. Here's where those hours at Grandma Eleanor's paid off. I'm sorting through this mountain of maps, and something catches my eye. It's this 17th century map of the New World, nothing flashy, but something felt off. The paper quality was unusual, and the ink seemed different. I spent my entire lunch break researching historical cartography, even stayed late at the office, using the company's subscription to antique map databases. The more I looked, the more convinced I became, this wasn't just any old map. This was something special. Problem was, I was just the new girl. Nobody would take me seriously. So, I did what debate team taught me, I prepared my case. Spent 2 weeks of lunch breaks and evenings studying everything I could about 17th century cartography, authentication techniques. Even took some of my meager savings and paid for an online course in historical document preservation. Finally, I went to my supervisor, Mr. Johnson. Brought this whole presentation, with comparative images, historical documentation, the works. Me, sir, I think we might have something significant in the Henderson collection. Mr. Johnson, barely looking up from his phone, Amelia, we've already cataloged those as standard estate items. Me, I know, but look at these watermarks. They match perfectly with a known cartographer from the 1680s. And the ink analysis suggests. Mr. Johnson, finally paying attention, where did you learn all this? Me, did some research. Long story short, that standard estate item sold for $65,000 at auction. Turns out it was a previously unknown map by a famous cartographer, depicting a lost colony. But here's the kicker, after that, Mr. Johnson started giving me more pieces to authenticate. Suddenly, my useless hobby had actual value. I threw myself into learning everything I could about antique maps and historical documents. Took every online course I could afford, spent weekends at estate sales, studying pieces. My apartment looked like a historian's fever dream, walls covered in printouts of watermarks and historical annotations. The auction house started seeing results. I was finding valuable pieces that others had missed, building relationships with collectors, learning the market. My commission checks got bigger. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was actually saving. Of course, my family remained spectacularly uninterested. At Sunday dinners, which I still attended, like a masochist, the conversation went something like this. Mom, Amelia's still at that antique place, right? Me, auction house, Mom. And yes. Actually, I just authenticated a rare manuscript. Olivia, interrupting, OMG, speaking of old stuff, you guys have to see this vintage-inspired necklace I got at the mall. But I didn't care anymore. For once, I had found something that was mine. Something I was genuinely good at. Something that had nothing to do with being Olivia's sister or the family disappointment. Then came the Blackwood collection. This was about 2 years into my time at the auction house. Huge estate, old money family, lots of hype. I was part of the team cataloging their historical documents, and that's when I spotted it, a seemingly unremarkable letter that everyone else had overlooked. Spent 3 days researching it, barely slept. Finally figured out it was a letter from a prominent figure in the American Revolution, thought to be lost. When it sold at auction for $310,000, Mr. Johnson called me into his office. I thought I was getting a promotion. Instead, he said something that changed everything. Mr. Johnson, Amelia, you're wasting your talent here. You should be running your own authentication business. At first, I laughed. Me? Start a business? With what money? But the idea took root. I started doing small freelance authentication jobs on the side. Word got around that I had a good eye. Private collectors began reaching out directly. One night, I was sitting in my tiny apartment, surrounded by reference books and authentication tools, when it hit me, I could do this. I could build something of my own. So, I did what any rational person would do, took out a massive loan against my car, emptied my savings, and rented a tiny office space above a dry cleaner's. Everyone thought I was crazy. Maybe I was. My office was a converted storage room, no bigger than a college dorm room. The rent was cheap because it smelled like fabric softener 24/7. And the Wi-Fi only worked if you stood on one leg in the southwest corner. But it was mine. Those first few months were terrifying. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. in cold sweats, calculating how many months until my savings ran out. The loan payments felt like a weight around my neck. My office furniture consisted of a folding table I got from a thrift store and a chair I literally found on the curb, cleaned it thoroughly, don't worry. But here's the thing about the high-end authentication world. It's all about reputation and connections. My time at the auction house had given me both. Started small, doing authentication work for local antique dealers. My rates were lower than the big firms, but my attention to detail was becoming known. Word spread. The turning point came 6 months in. A dealer I'd worked with at the auction house called about a collection of 18th century letters. The owner wanted authentication before selling. Turned out to be a huge collection, 3 generations of family correspondence. I worked on it for 2 weeks straight, barely sleeping, documenting everything. Found 2 incredibly rare letters that had been misidentified as later copies. The owner was so impressed with my detailed report that she not only paid my fee but also gave me a 10% commission when the letters sold. That commission? $98,000. More money than I'd made in the previous 2 years combined. Suddenly, my phone started ringing. A lot. Private collectors who'd heard about my eye for overlooked pieces, estate lawyers wanting consultation on inheritance documents. Even my old auction house started sending me work. Pretty sure Mr. Johnson was secretly helping spread the word. Thanks, boss. Year 2, I hired my first employee, Grace, a recent history grad who reminded me way too much of myself at that age, smart as hell but overlooked because she was quiet. She's now my head of research and literally worth her weight in gold. The business grew faster than I could have imagined. Moved to a real office downtown, goodbye, fabric softener smell, built a team of specialists, developed a reputation for finding lost pieces. You'd be amazed how many important historical documents are sitting in people's attics, misidentified as junk. But success brought its own challenges. The bigger we got, the harder it became to keep it quiet from my family. They still thought I worked at some antique place. Olivia would make these condescending comments at family dinners. Amelia, I have some old papers I was going to throw out. Maybe your little shop would want them? Me, having just authenticated a $1.5 million historical document that morning. Sure, I'll take a look. Mom still introduced me to people as my other daughter. She works with old things. Meanwhile, I was being quoted in Forbes, under my company name, thankfully, and had just opened our second office location. The weird part? Keeping it secret became almost fun. Like a private joke, I'd sit there at Sunday dinner in my carefully selected normal clothes, while Olivia bragged about her entry-level marketing job, knowing I'd just closed a deal worth more than her annual salary. Even started playing little games, like wearing genuine antique jewelry to family events, waiting to see if anyone would notice. They never did. Olivia once spent 20 minutes showing off her fancy $150 department store watch, while I was wearing a vintage Patek Philippe worth more than her car. But the real challenge was managing growth. By year 5, we had offices in San Francisco, Chicago, and New York. I was spending more time on planes than in my own bed. Built a reputation for discretion. Turns out, lots of wealthy people want their historical documents authenticated without the world knowing. The money was substantial. Had to hire a team of financial advisors substantial. But I kept living relatively modestly. Bought a nice but not flashy house, drove a high-end but not obvious car. The only place I really splurged was my home office, state-of-the-art authentication equipment, best security system money could buy, and a custom-built vault. The irony? They thought I was being frugal to afford helping them. Mom would say things like, "It's so sweet of Amelia to help out. She must be eating nothing but ramen to manage it." Meanwhile, I just authenticated a collection that netted me a commission bigger than their mortgage. You know what's weird about success? The more you have, the harder it is to explain to people who've always seen you as less. It's like trying to explain color to someone who's only ever seen in black and white. They don't have the context. By this point, my company was doing incredibly well. We'd cornered the market on high-end historical document authentication on the West Coast, and our reputation was solid gold. But every Sunday, I'd still drive to my parents' house, playing the role of Amelia, the modest antique shop worker. The cognitive dissonance was getting ridiculous. I'd spend my mornings on conference calls with international collectors, afternoons authenticating documents worth millions, then show up at my parents' house in carefully selected normal clothes to eat Mom's overcooked casserole while Olivia dominated the conversation with stories about her latest marketing triumph, usually something like getting her boss's coffee order correct. One Sunday stands out. I just finished a major deal, authenticated a lost letter from a founding father that had been sitting in someone's safety deposit box for 50 years. The commission alone was 7 figures. Drove straight from that meeting to my parents' house, still riding the high. "Mom, Amelia, honey, is everything okay? Your clothes are looking a bit worn." Me, wearing a $2,500 cashmere sweater I'd deliberately chosen because it looked understated. "Oh, trying to save money." Olivia, "Well, if you'd gotten a real job instead of playing with old papers. Dad, Olivia, be nice. Not everyone can be as successful as you. I nearly choked on my casserole. The monthly payments to my parents started around this time. Found out through Aunt Carol that they were struggling with Olivia's student loans and some medical bills. Mom had mentioned offhand that they might have to sell the house. Couldn't let that happen. Despite everything, it was still the house I grew up in. Set up an anonymous monthly transfer of $4,000 to their account. When they asked, I claimed I was contributing $800 of it by living on rice and beans. They assumed the rest came from Aunt Carol or other relatives. Olivia, of course, took credit for inspiring family members to help. The money helped, but it also changed things. My parents started treating me with this weird mix of pity and patronizing pride, like I was some kind of noble charity case, sacrificing everything to help family. Meanwhile, Olivia's spending got more outrageous. She'd show up to dinner with new designer bags, claiming they were outlet finds. They weren't. I can spot a real Prada at 20 paces, started taking expensive vacations, posting all over Instagram about her #blessed life. Pretty sure she was using my support money for her shopping sprees. But I bit my tongue. The irony was too perfect. Then came the college fund drama. Olivia announced she wanted to go back to school for her MBA. Another private university, of course. Nothing but the best for the golden child. Mom called me in tears, saying they couldn't afford it. Me, maybe Olivia could look at state schools? They have good programs, too. Mom, oh, honey, you don't understand. Your sister needs to maintain certain standards. But, speaking of helping, could you maybe increase your monthly contribution? Just for a few years? I bumped it up to $6,000 monthly. Didn't even dent my accounts. But watching them praise Olivia for taking initiative with her education, while assuming I was living on ramen to help out. That stung. The real kicker? I was teaching a guest seminar at the same business school Olivia wanted to attend. Not that my family knew that. The dean personally asked me to lecture about historical document authentication and business growth. Had to make up an excuse about why I couldn't make it to Sunday dinner that week. My own success started feeling like this separate life, like I was some kind of corporate superhero with a secret identity. By day, I was running a multi-million-dollar authentication empire. By night, well, Sunday evenings, I was just Amelia, the disappointing daughter who worked at some antique place. The weight of the lie was getting heavier, though. Every time Olivia made a condescending comment about my career, every time Mom apologized to her friends about my modest lifestyle, every time Dad suggested I look for a real job, it got harder to stay quiet. Looking back, I think I always knew it would end dramatically. I just didn't expect it to implode quite so spectacularly. At Thanksgiving. It started 2 weeks before the holiday. Mom called, crying about her back pain. She'd been diagnosed with a slipped disc, and the thought of cooking Thanksgiving dinner for 18 people was overwhelming her. Now, I'd love to tell you I offered to help purely out of kindness, but honestly, I was tired of pretending her dry turkey was edible. Me, why don't I handle the food this year? I can have it catered. Mom, oh, honey, we can't afford a caterer. Me, don't worry about the cost. I've been saving up. Mom, sounding concerned, you're not taking out a loan, are you? I arranged everything through this high-end catering company I use for my business events. They do amazing work, the kind of food that makes you wonder why you ever bothered cooking. Cost more than what my parents thought I made in 2 months. But whatever. Thanksgiving morning arrived, and I was actually feeling pretty good. Had my laptop with me, because I needed to monitor an important online auction in London. This incredible 18th century manuscript was up for sale, and I had a client very interested in authentication if they won the bid. The food arrived exactly on time, everything perfectly prepared. Olivia, of course, had to comment. Olivia, store-bought stuffing? Really, Amelia? Mom's is so much better. This from the girl who once set off the smoke alarm trying to make toast. Mom kept apologizing to everyone about not cooking herself, but you could tell people were actually enjoying the food. Even Olivia shut up once she tasted the balsamic glazed Brussels sprouts, which, by the way, cost more per plate than her weekly grocery budget. I stepped away between dinner and dessert to check my laptop. The auction was getting interesting, and I needed to be ready if my client won. Set up in my old bedroom, which Mom had kept exactly the same since high school. Meanwhile, Olivia's room had been renovated 3 times. That's when everything went sideways. I'd left my authentication software running, multiple tabs open, showing various accounts and ongoing deals. Olivia barged in without knocking. Some things never change, to borrow my phone charger. She spotted my laptop screen and decided this was her moment, to finally expose how pathetic her big sister really was. Olivia, smirking, let's show everyone what Amelia's really been up to on Thanksgiving. Before I could stop her, she grabbed my laptop and marched into the dining room. Picture this, 18 people, aunts, uncles, cousins, my parents, all stuffed with gourmet turkey and half drunk on expensive wine, which they thought was from Trader Joe's. Olivia, time to see what kind of important work Amelia's doing on Thanksgiving. She turned the laptop around triumphantly, clearly expecting to embarrass me with whatever small-time antique deal she thought I was working on. The room went dead silent. You could hear the expensive clock I'd bought Mom for Christmas, which she thought was a replica, ticking. My screen showed. Current account balance, $11.8 million. Pending authentication contract, $520,000. Recent transaction, $1.3 million, that London auction. Company quarterly profit report, $3.9 million. Olivia's face went through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. The last one settled somewhere between shock and nausea. She actually swayed a bit. Olivia, barely whispering, this can't be right. Mom, Olivia, honey, what is it? Olivia, voice cracking, she's rich. Amelia's rich. The silence got even deeper, if that was possible. Then Mom started laughing. Actually laughing. Mom, don't be silly, Olivia. Amelia works at that little antique shop. I stood up slowly, straightening my simple cashmere sweater, that cost more than their monthly mortgage. Actually, Mom, I own one of the largest historical document authentication companies in the country. Have for years. Those antique shop comments? I authenticate pieces worth millions. That little business you never asked about? It has offices in 3 cities. Dad choked on his wine. Aunt Carol dropped her fork. Uncle George started coughing uncontrollably. Then Mom's laughter turned into something else. Her face went red, then purple. She stood up so fast her chair fell over. Mom, screaming, you have millions? And you let us struggle? Me, struggle? I send you $6,000 every month. Mom, while sitting on millions? Your sister has student loans. And there it was. Not congratulations. Not wow, we're so proud. Just instant anger that I hadn't given them more money. Olivia started crying, shocking, I know, saying something about how she deserved to know, how I'd betrayed the family. Dad joined in, how could you be so selfish? We're your parents. We raised you. That's when I lost it. Years of being overlooked, dismissed, treated like the family disappointment. It all came pouring out. Raised me? You shipped me off to grandma's every time I had a sniffle. You missed every achievement, every award, every milestone because Olivia might feel left out. You never saved a penny for my college but took out loans for her private school. And now you're mad that I built something for myself? The next 10 minutes were chaos. Mom screaming about family obligations, Dad ranting about ungrateful children, Olivia alternating between sobbing and demanding to know exactly how much money I had. Meanwhile, the expensive catering staff were trying to serve dessert, looking extremely uncomfortable. I grabbed my laptop, picked up my Hermes bag, which Mom had earlier complimented as a nice knockoff, and walked out. Behind me, I could hear Mom already planning how to spend my money, something about Olivia's MBA and a new car. As I drove home in my sensible car, actually a limited edition Audi, my phone started blowing up. The family group chat exploded. Olivia started posting on Facebook about hidden family wealth and selfish siblings. But you know what the craziest part was? I felt relieved. Like I could finally breathe properly for the first time in years. The days following the Thanksgiving were like watching a hurricane hit in slow motion, except the hurricane was my family, and the debris was my sanity. Let's start with the text messages. Within an hour of leaving dinner, my phone had 47 missed calls and over 200 messages. Mom went through this fascinating progression. 7:42 p.m. How dare you walk out on family? 8:15 p.m. We need to talk about this like adults. 9:03 p.m. Your sister deserves a share of your success. 10:30 p.m. I've already called a realtor about houses in better neighborhoods. 11:45 p.m. Why aren't you answering? This is your mother. Olivia, meanwhile, had gone full social media warrior. Posted this epic rant on Facebook about how her millionaire sister had been hoarding wealth while watching her beloved family struggle. The comment section was wild. Distant relatives and old high school classmates suddenly had very strong opinions about my moral character. But here's the part that really got me. Olivia actually posted about how, all those years, she'd been trying to help me with my career, giving me advice about moving up from that little antique shop, and I was secretly wealthy. The betrayal hurt so much. I nearly threw my phone across the room. The only career advice she'd ever given me was suggesting I try selling crafts on Etsy. Then came the flying monkeys. If you're not familiar with the term, it's when toxic family members send other people to guilt trip you. Aunt Susan, who I see maybe once every 3 years, called to tell me about how family is everything. Uncle Bob, who I'm pretty sure still thinks I'm 12, emailed a long lecture about the importance of sharing wealth. Even my third cousin's wife's sister somehow got my number to share her thoughts on family duty. But the real fun started when they showed up at my office on Monday morning. I walked in to find Mom, Dad, and Olivia sitting in our reception area. They'd told Grace, my receptionist, they had an appointment for authentication services. Olivia was clutching her Michael Kors bag like it might actually be worth something. The conversation went about as well as you'd expect. Mom, we've discussed it as a family. Me, a family discussion without the family member you're discussing? Mom, ignoring me, and we think it's only fair that you set up trust funds for everyone. Olivia needs at least $2 million to start her new life properly. Dad, and your mother and I would like to retire. We're thinking a beach house in Florida. Me, did you miss the part where I've been sending you $6,000 monthly? Olivia, that's nothing compared to what you have. You owe us. Me, I owe you? For what, exactly? The years of being ignored? The missed graduations? The constant comparisons? Mom, don't be dramatic, Amelia. We gave you everything. Me, no. I gave myself everything. And you know what? I'm done. Right there, in my own office lobby, I pulled out my phone and canceled the monthly transfers to their account. Mom actually gasped, like I'd slapped her. Olivia started doing her fake crying thing but stopped real quick when she realized it wasn't working. That's when it got ugly. They refused to leave. I had to call security. Watching my 60-year-old mother being escorted out while screaming about ungrateful children was surreal. Grace asked if I wanted to press charges. I said no, but I did have their names added to the building's do not admit list. The harassment continued for weeks. New phone numbers, fake email accounts. They even tried to reach me through my company's customer service. I finally had to send a formal legal notice, threatening harassment charges. That's when Mom played her final card. She called Grandma Eleanor. But here's the thing about Grandma Eleanor, she's smarter than all of them combined. Her response? Good for Amelia. About time someone in this family succeeded on their own terms. Mom didn't speak to her for 2 months after that. It's been 6 months since Thanksgiving. I moved to a new house, with better security, changed all my numbers. The company's doing better than ever. Turns out, my family drama actually brought in some high-profile clients who appreciated my discretion. Olivia's still posting passive-aggressive updates about toxic wealth and family betrayal. Last I heard, she's telling everyone she's starting her own historical document authentication business. Good luck with that. Mom and Dad finally stopped trying to contact me when I had my lawyer send them a formal letter detailing exactly how harassment charges would affect their lives. They're now telling everyone they never wanted my money anyway and how they're praying for my soul. But you know what? For the first time in my life, I feel free. No more Sunday dinners filled with subtle jabs. No more downplaying my success. No more funding the Olivia show. My therapist says I'm finally setting healthy boundaries. I say I'm finally living authentically. So, that's my story, Reddit. Thanks for letting me share it. Special shout out to the catering company. They sent me a Christmas card saying that Thanksgiving dinner was the highlight of their year. Edit, since people keep asking. Yes, I'm still in therapy. No, I don't regret cutting them off. And yes, Grandma Eleanor is doing great. She's coming to visit next month to help me catalog a new collection. One more thing, if you are interested on help our company, we have scholarship program, check it out. And to Olivia, since I know you're probably reading this, that vintage.